Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week. And this week I had 10 comics to talk about, so kind of a light haul, but let's get started. So I go least favorite to Best Pick of the Week, and number 10 for me is The Amazing Spider-Man Daily Bugle issue 1. So I kind of got this on whim because, like I said, it was a light haul, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I wanted to try it out, and as a journalist, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of see this side of Marvel, but I don't know if there was much of a story, A, to really have even a one-shot, but B, to have a 5-issue miniseries. We're introduced to Robbie's niece and how she's a journalist through social media and didn't go to journalism school, and we kind of follow her journey. And then the old school Daily Bugle characters. So Peter's back for some reason. We'll see if that's brought into continuity with the actual Spider-Man series. We get to see Bettie, who's only on a speakerphone, because if you don't know, she's an actual journalist now. So we get a little bit of that, which was cool to see them, but it wasn't really about the ensemble cast, which I think is where it missed the beat. It is about this girl and I guess the day-to-day of the Daily Bugle. I just didn't really love the execution of this book, and there's just something missing. Also, I thought the artwork was very damp, and the inking was very dark for this series. Wasn't a huge fan of it. So overall, I'm giving The Amazing Spider-Man Daily Bugle issue 1, sorry for the glare, 2 stars. Alright, moving on to number 9. Kind of sad to see this so low because I did like the first issue, and that is Suicide Squad issue 1. 2, I mean. Issue 2 of Suicide Squad. And I just thought this issue jumped a lot. You know, there's a lot of new characters for this series, and I don't know them yet. So to see them interacting with so many people, and then you jump from Lagoon Boy to this opener with Deadshot, which is actually meets to the end of how this president died. It just kind of jumped way too much for me. But the artwork for this book is drop dead gorgeous. I think it's some of the best artwork, probably on stands, but especially from DC. And I do like this creative team a lot. I just hope it owns into some more character beats so we could just learn about this team. Even though I do like the interaction of, you know, these members who weren't part of the same team kind of foiling each other's plans because they don't like each other, but they still have to work together. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, Suicide Squad issue 2 gets 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. Alright, moving on to number 8, which is the Immortal Hulk issue 30. And yeah, this is a bit lower than usual. I love this book, but it was a bit slow. It's mostly the monster battle. So if you like action, I think you'll enjoy this issue. But there's not too many character beats. It's really just the Hulk's going up against this monster and how that is, I guess, connected to the villain and what they're doing with the Hulk. But I feel like they're so mysterious that there's not a lot of answers. And honestly, I didn't know who that character was in the end, so that didn't really help me. And that character is also on the cover. But yeah, it's just monsters versus monsters. Who's worse? What type of monster is worse? I did like the small Bettie parts we get here of how she's kind of changed as a person, especially as she's a harpy. So I enjoyed that, and I guess the world seeing the new Hulk team was interesting, and them reacting to it was cool. But other than it being a big action piece, I didn't get too much from this issue. So overall, I'm giving this 3 stars. I still think it was horrific, and again, a good action issue. Just didn't have as many character beats as I like for a book, and especially for this Hulk book. So I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is number 8, I believe. Yeah, so moving on to number 7, which is Go-Go Power Rangers, issue 28. And this is a completely different type of issue. So it's a one-shot. So if you've never read Power Rangers, the comics, I think this is a good jumping on point, kind of, because it really doesn't have to do with the Power Rangers. It has to do with Rita and kind of the psychological things she went through being trapped in that garbage for 10,000 years. So that kind of stupid line that was said in the theme song actually comes to fruition and tells a very powerful story where we get to see Rita living the lives of everyone she killed. And I enjoy the concept a lot of this issue. I love that. I think there's a lot of good emotional beats of all the villains here. But for me, I didn't quite connect to the stories of the aliens just because I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, and honestly not like a huge villain fan. I mentioned this in like a podcast earlier, but I was the girl watching Sailor Moon and would skip the villain scenes. So I never was a fan of those and like the exposition of villain scenes. But obviously this was a bit more than exposition, but I don't know if it was really catered to my liking, but I think it was a really well written issue, and if you want to learn more about Rita, it was just a really interesting way to structure an issue. So overall, I gave Go-Go Power Rangers issue 28 3 stars. There's also a different artist on this to give it a kind of a different vibe. I don't know if it's the strongest artwork that we've seen in the series, but it's cool that we did get a different artist for it. So, like I said, that was number 7, and moving on to number 6. So, number 6 for me is Outcast issue 44. We're finally kind of getting to the end of this book, and a bit more to the conflict of this book. I mean, one of my biggest issues of Outcast, though, is, like, if you know anything about The Walking Dead, it's The Walking Dead, except with, like, exorcisms. So I don't love that because it's a little bit too similar to me, but I enjoy the character beats, and we get to see a bit more from Kyle's wife, who's kind of taken over by this lightness that was the only part that kind of survived the darkness, and is giving them the play-by-play of how to win or really how to lose this thing, seeing if they actually can win this thing. And the reason why this is higher than some of the other books was honestly the ending. We get to see the villain, because of what happened to his kids, becoming these exorcism people. I don't know what to really call them. Monsters, demons. He goes to the Outcast and says, hey, can you help me? And he's kind of been the big bad of the whole entire series. So I thought that was a good twist. I also love the emotional beats through the artwork. I love how somber it is and kind of how slow it is as well. I just really love the visuals and kind of cinematic feel of this book. So Outcast issue 44 gets 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is actually a book I just did an interview for, and that is Bettie Page Unbound issue 10, which is the last issue for Bettie Page. And if you want to go check out that interview, I'll have it in the end credits for this video, so check that out. But yeah, Bettie Page Unbound. I like this book a lot. It's a fun espionage book. I really like Betty's snark, and in this one, it's Betty having to go up against this bee queen. And I mean, the aspect I haven't liked about this arc and why it's, I guess, a little lower grade-wise is because it is very B-movie. It's her dealing with very B-movie sci-fi situations, and not particularly my genre, but I like the espionage aspect. I like the cast that this series has built. Overall, the artwork's really smooth as well, so overall I thought it was a good ending, and hopefully we get to see more Bettie Page in the future. So I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is Bettie Page Unbound, issue 10, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Hawkeye Freefall, issue 2. So this is, I think, a little higher than that first issue, but I also think that first issue came out with like 5 books out, so maybe it's in the same ranking. But I enjoyed this issue a bit more than issue 1. I like Clint, you know, I didn't really love the Hood in that first issue, and he's in it still don't like him, but he's not in it as much, and I do like the Ronin stuff. That's like what's kind of bringing me to read this miniseries. I want to see who Ronin is, and then we get that cliffhanger where it might be Clint, so that kind of gets confusing, but I want to see where that goes and how that's possible, and maybe it's like a future person or a clone. We'll have to see. But I like the comedy in this book and the interactions Clint has, especially with Luke. I enjoyed that Clint has to get these arrows off the ground because he can't afford more, and what he's used his money for as he sold the apartments. So that's interesting. Kind of goes back to Clint being rock bottom, starting over what Clint has always gone through. But yeah, overall I thought it was a fun issue, and anytime he interacted with the superheroes or his friends was a lot of fun. I like the artwork overall. I think it fits for this kind of street level series and a mix of action and comedy. And I am interested to see where they take Ronin. Like I said, that's kind of the hook for me right now. So Hawkeye Freefall issue 2 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Captain Marvel The End, issue 1. And I haven't followed all the End series. I didn't really like the Miles Morales one. I really didn't like it. So I was a little hesitant to pick up another one because I didn't really feel invested in them, but I love Kelly Thompson. I love her writing, and I am following Captain Marvel, so I'm like, why not? I'll pick this up. And I really think this was a good love letter, not just to Captain Marvel, but to Kelly Thompson fans, and I think that's what I enjoyed the most of it. I don't know if I cared about, like, the post-apocalyptic type world and her sacrificing herself. I think the end part was the part I didn't care about as much. It was actually just the character beats of Carol interacting with people who have changed. Jessica has changed and see where she's at in life. The new generation of heroes was cool to see. I love seeing Danny and Lucy, I believe her name was, the daughters. So one daughter is of Jessica Jones and Luke, and then the other daughter is of Misty and Danny. I thought it was cool that they ended up together, and I think they were in like a Jeremy Whitley one shot, so it was cool that they ended up being married. So hopefully we could actually pick up those pieces somewhere in the future, because I want to see Luke and Danny like react to that. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, those little moments is what I enjoy the most. I love seeing Emma here. She's still sarcastic, and I love the moment where Carol's like, "You're still alive?" It's like, yeah, of course I'm still alive. I'm fabulous. So I love Emma Frost here, and artwork's really good, especially like kind of Captain Marvel's new form. So overall, I had a fun time with this, and if you've enjoyed past Thompson series, there's a lot of cool characters here that appear, and it's a cool look at the next generation of Marvel heroes. So Captain Marvel issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. And that is number 3. Moving on to number 2. Speaking of Emma Frost on the cover here, we got X-Men issue 5. Overall, I've been really liking X-Men a lot. And this issue, it's a bit of a slow burn and honestly a quick read, but definitely builds up to something interesting where Cyclops sends, what's his name? I know Laura. Sends Laura into the vault. Also Darwin into the vault, and I think it was Cinch who also went into the vault. So Cyclops is like, yeah, we don't really know what's gonna happen there. You might die. You might never come back. Bye! Because they have to figure out who these, the children of the vault is and kind of the mysteries within it. And Cyclops in the end of the issue is like, yeah, I made a mistake because they've been gone for like 3 months, and that means they've been gone for thousands of years in that world. So I'm curious to see how they're gonna come out if they do. Is Laura gonna be the same? Because I think out of all the characters, she's the biggest, so I feel like we're probably gonna get the most story from her. And I feel like finally Laura was in character. I feel like it's been a while since the Wolverine series that this felt like Laura's voice and felt like the development she's had from Wolverine. And I love that moment where she's like, yeah, I am Wolverine. So I like their little interactions between Logan and Laura. So I enjoyed Laura a lot in this issue. I love the artwork as always. And yeah, it was a very interesting story to tell and a start of the story. And Cyclops is already screwing up. So it's only issue 5 and he's done some wrongs. So we'll see how this turns out and how this develops the overall X-Men mythos. But I thought it was a solid installment of X-Men. So I'm giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to my number 1 pick, and that is Dial H for Hero, issue 11, which is the penultimate issue of Dial H. And I love this book, as you guys know. It's my favorite DC title out there right now, and one of my favorite titles on stands. And this issue blows it away, it blows me away, and hits it out of the park once again. And what I love is that the issue opens up with Summer saying, "Dear Dad," So this series has started out with Miguel saying, "Dear Superman." It's always been kind of this love for Superman and how Miguel's kind of become his own hero because of his love for Superman. And now we're seeing it from Summer's point of view and what she's gone through and how her relationship with her dad has maybe changed her perspective of what a hero means. And what I also like in this issue, it's very much Miguel saying, hey, no, let's follow the evil version of the operator, and Summer's like, no, we shouldn't follow him, but neither is wrong. Miguel's not painted as the villain. He's just painted to show his perspective. And I love that, and I think that's what's done so well here is how perspective is shown. And then, of course, the artwork is just so good. The different styles that's explored here. We get to see like a cyborg version of Miguel. We get to see the red and blue Superman. So that was really cool. And there's a lot of good twists and turns that like feel earth-shattering, literally. So it's a really cool book that I think the plot is so well done, the story is really well done, and if you're not checking it out, please check out Dial H. It's so good. So I really enjoyed this, especially as a summer fan. I love that was in her perspective. So I'm giving that 4 stars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite book of the week was, what your least favorite book of the week was, and everything in between. Definitely go follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics, Like Father, Like Daughter, and They Call Her Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, our comic podcast on Comic Frontline, where we discuss all things comics, our top 5, comic news, and a lot of stuff over there. So go check that out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Bye.